Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about why home staking isn't going anywhere. Or as Barnaby Mono puts it from the EF, rumors of the solo staker's death have been greatly exaggerated. So I'm Nixo, I'm the executive director of ETHStaker. ETHStaker is a nonprofit. We have no protocol, we have nothing to shill. We're just an educational community. We're a community of stakers who are here to make money, here to support each other, and here to support the Ethereum network. ETHStaker is committed to the health and decentralization of the validator set, and that means creating or maintaining existing home stakers where we can. We do that by supporting or creating resources, tooling, community events, and doing advocacy and research or wherever we can, or wherever it needs to be done. So the first question we want to ask is, we've touched a lot today on the in the other presentations on why staking is important, but why is home staking important in staking? Does anybody actually want to venture a guess? Why is home staking specifically important? Anybody brave enough to throw anything out? What? Decentralization, yes. So to talk about the value of home staking, the first thing we're going to do is talk about the value proposition of Ethereum. Ethereum is permissionless in two different ways. Anybody can participate in consensus. Also, anybody can transact on the network. And anybody can transact on the network, and you're not going to get censored. So it's censorship resistance. It's got public governance. You probably are familiar with this, the whole EIP process. You basically do a lot of research, you have a lot of discussion on various forums with various people, and then you write up an EIP, you propose it, you bring it to the all core devs call, they talk about what it would take to implement it, and then there's a whole testing process, and then it goes into a hard fork. It doesn't favor any one entity over another, which is critical because no business is going to use Ethereum if they think their competitor is going to be at an advantage relative to them. It's trustless, meaning once you deploy a contract or transact on a contract, you can be sure that once variable A is satisfied and variable B is satisfied, you're going to get outcome C. It's immutable, so after a transaction is finalized, it's not going to be reverted, it's not going to be reorged. And it's resilient. So going through, I want to show of hands how many, oh shit, okay. Show of hands, there are, I think, 4 on here that I think that home staking is most critical for. I want you to raise your hand if you think permissionless is one. Censorship resistant. Public governance. Doesn't favor one entity over another. Trustless. Immutable. Resilient. Okay. So the ones that I think that home staking is most critical for is permissionlessness, censorship resistant, doesn't favor one entity over another, and it's resilient. So permissionless is because anybody can participate. A home staker can participate on the chain, and the more home stakers there are on the chain, the more they advocate for themselves, and the more that the property of Ethereum sticks around. Censorship resistance, because even if 1% of the network is home stakers, say 99% of it is just kiln staking, and OFAC goes to them and says, we want to censor all these transactions. If there is even one home staker on the network, that transaction is eventually going to get through on the network. Doesn't favor one entity over another for the same reason. All this decentralization means that you can't, by definition, home stakers are heterogeneous. You can't identify them. They're anonymous. You can't persuade them because they're difficult to contact. And they're resilient. They add to the resilience of the chain. And this is an example of that. Back in 2022, when we were doing a whole push for consensus layer client diversity, all of the home stakers actually moved to a diverse consensus layer landscape before professional operators did. And you could see that because Rocket Pool, who has a lot of home stakers and actually keeps really good tabs on their consensus layer client diversity, published this, and you could see the overall network landscape. And Prism had at that point, like 45%, and this is November 2023, so this is after a lot of it had been dealt with. Prism had 45%, whereas homestakers had moved to almost 5%. So they had gotten the message, and after this, everybody went on social media and they bullied staking providers, and they were like, move off of Prism. And then they did the same thing with Geth. And so homestakers tend to be more engaged, more ideological, and they care about Ethereum more. So you might have seen tweets like this on Twitter, basically saying, homestaking is fucked. It's going away. The research right now is going to make sure that like homestaking doesn't exist anymore. But this presentation is to show you that that's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So the fundamental problems that Ethereum is dealing with right now, I put into basically two categories, but they both fit under the fact that Ethereum is building something that has never been made before. Proof of stake is, it exists in different implementations, but it's never existed the way that Ethereum is building it, and it's never existed with so much value, total value locked on it, and so much activity happening on it. So it's every problem that it deals with is in production. It can't take the network down to deal with it. It can't have maintenance time. So every problem that it has is a brand new problem on Earth. So two categories of problems that we're seeing right now is that ETH holders sell their right to stake, which means they go to Lido, Rocket Pool, whatever, they buy liquid staking tokens. And that means that they sell their right to stake with protocols with professional operators who can maximize their yield. And the second category of problem is that block proposers, so validators, sell their right to propose, which means that validators run MEV boost. I don't know if you've heard of that, but what it means is that they're selling their right to order transactions to sophisticated builders who can maximize the extraction from the users who are transacting on the chain. And what this ends up is, this creates a market of liquid staking protocols, and this creates a market of builders. And both of these create unregulated markets, and unregulated markets tend to centralize and monopolize. And we have seen that both with liquid staking protocols and with builders. I think builders were down to like five-ish big builders, but like 2 of them are running the majority of the network. And so this is just a breakdown of like the purest version of proof of stake that I think that the researchers had hoped for when they designed proof of stake was this. This is a validator. It's chosen to propose of this set of validators. It's randomly chosen to propose. It has a consensus layer. It has consensus, and it has execution in its block. It bundles them together. The user submits to a mempool, and then it puts it on the network. And all the other validators attest to that block and say, I see that block too. And these little happy faces denote that these are humans behind these validators. These are single operators, independent operators. But we have to have realistic expectations about real behavior. We can't just say this is how we want Ethereum to be. So what ends up happening is this validator sells their right to order this block to a business, and that business takes a user's transactions, it orders those transactions, it extracts what it can, and then it gives it back to the validator, who then adds it to the chain. And this validator, more likely than not, is now not an independent operator, it's also a business. And so you have like one little independent validator left over here, and everybody's making a little bit less money because there's a whole lot more capital on the network now, and these people are making a little bit of money. They're making a little bit of money. This is costing them a little bit more money because because things are being extracted from them. And this creates a vulnerability in censorship resistance because this entity says, I don't like that transaction, and these entities have legal entities. They're easy to find. They don't want to deal with problems. They have lawyers. Any government comes to them, especially an influential government, or even just a malicious actor on the chain, and says, we don't want you to put that transaction on the chain, and it's easier for that business to go, okay, like we won't put it on the chain, because they don't want to deal with the litigation, they don't want to deal with the headache, and so they'll censor it, but this little happy guy still isn't censoring it. So that's a problem with censorship resistance. So we're gonna pivot to research. What is being done to fix these problems? Who are the researchers? We have three classes of researchers. Independent researchers, we have Ethereum Foundation researchers who are either employed or funded by the EF. And then we have researchers who are funded by companies in crypto. And I divide those into two subcategories because that's important. These businesses are either working in Ethereum generally, and their goal is to make sure that Ethereum survives long term because their business runs on Ethereum. And the second category is a business whose business model benefits directly from validator rewards or MEV. And I put this into a separate category because their goal is to maximize their revenue, not necessarily to make sure that Ethereum is the best that it can be. So just when you see some of these research, this research come out, or you see the criticisms of those research proposals come out, consider the source, because what a person's financial incentive is matters for what their opinion is going to be on the research. So two categories of research. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it is two categories that directly impact proof of stake and staking. The first is a tiny little contentious issue that you might have heard of on Twitter. It's the issuance curve. And I say that because crypto Twitter absolutely blew up about it in like March, April, and everybody was angry. But the second one is changes to block building structure. And this one is a very complex topic, and the examples you might have heard of is execution tickets, MEV burn, attested proposer separation, rainbow staking, and execution auctions. We're not going to go through these in detail because they're actually really complicated. But generally, issuance curve changes is a blunt tool. This is why it kind of pisses people off. The goal of issuance curve changes is to control the influx and profitability of operating with economies of scale. Oh, this is a PDF. I had a different image. So the issuance curve is this curve that like yield is on ignore this, but yield is on the left, and as you have more ETH staked, the issuance goes down, and the reason it goes down is because it's meant to find an equilibrium. It's meant to find a place where people won't stake anymore because they're like, yield is too low, I'm going to bring my capital somewhere else and get money on that. But what we have found is since the beginning of the beacon chain, demand has not gone down. Demand has actually gone up, especially since withdrawals were enabled. So issuance curve changes seek to lessen the amount of stake that is going on the chain because there's a finite number of people who can home stake, whereas there's an infinite amount of capital that can go into a liquid staking protocol. So it seeks to maintain a healthy validator set composition, which has a focus on solo stakers. And I don't think nobody really disagrees about these goals. People just disagree about the means to get there. The second category is changes to block building structure. So changes to block building structure fundamentally changes the incentives in block building. And so this is where we are now. A single validator has a monopoly over this block, and they propose both consensus and execution. But you can imagine a world where we sell parts of the block separately. So like top of block transactions tend to be more valuable. So you could sell that in separately. Or you could have a bunch of different stakers who all participate in an auction, and one proposer wins the right to do that auction. And the reason that helps is because then they end up bidding up to the value of what they're going to get, which essentially burns a little bit, burns the majority of what they would have made. You could also imagine a world where you have multiple validators working to propose a single block rather than just one proposer having a monopoly and being able to outsource their building to builders. You could also have different kinds of validators. Maybe this validator has more robust hardware, this validator is a solo staker, and so they perform different kinds of duties that are rewarded differently. But in any case, this is really complicated research. You don't really need to know any of it, but what I do want you to understand is that these proposals are written by people who really want solo stakers, who think that solo stakers are part of the reason why Ethereum exists. Solo stakers represent part of the reason that Ethereum exists. So execution tickets, rainbow staking, issuance changes, I just pulled, I won't read all of them, but I just pulled some random sentences out of those that show like that the purpose of these research proposals are to benefit decentralized forms of staking. So not only, yes, do they take solo stakers into account, but addressing the things that disadvantage solo stakers and create perverse incentives and the ability to disproportionately influence Ethereum is the entire point of these proposals. So Ethereum is solving never before seen problems in the world with a proof of stake model that has never existed before. Staking will change, rewards will change, and the role of a solo validator will change. So none of these things are static. We don't have a perfect proof of stake model. We do have some pretty major points of centralization that need to be dealt with. So we can't be static and just be like everything is fine. But it's still prime time to get involved. So home stakers are bad at advocating for themselves. They're heterogeneous. They don't really talk to each other a lot. A lot of them follow the guide, set it up, and ignore their validator unless anything goes wrong. But the more home stakers there are, the more they're taken into consideration. Because if you have this like super secret, shadowy group of people who you're not even sure if they exist, you're not going to advocate for them. But if you have 50 people at each conference going, yeah, I run a node at home, research is going to more and more take them into account. So there is strength in number, and the more home stakers there are, the more they are advocated for in research. And I think anybody in crypto knows that success comes from being early to things. So right now, in its current state, Ethereum home staking is not going to stay the way that it is, but once the protocol is closer to ossification, once home staking is in a situation where it won't be changing very much, there just won't be that much upside. So like right now is the time to start home staking and get involved. And you don't need 32 ETH to get involved, and I know you already heard some stuff about DBT, but you haven't really heard how it works. So I'm going to pass it over to Nikki, who's going to talk a little bit about DBT.
Thank you. Okay, and here we go again. Bueno, vamos a hacer un cambio de chip, voy a hablar en español porque va a ser mucho más simple. Y creo que como que toda la tarde vienen escuchando por qué staking, por qué es importante para Ethereum y para nosotros también. Pero me gustaba como agregar una cosita más, que era ¿por qué nos tiene que importar? Porque hoy hay 1 millón de validadores y eso está buenísimo para la descentralización de Ethereum, pero menos del 10% son home stakers. Y si escucharon todo lo que Nixo dijo, realmente se van a dar cuenta que la descentralización no viene solo por cuántos validadores haya, porque si estos están todos controlados por un mismo ente, una misma entidad, es como que es exactamente lo mismo, ¿no? Entonces, cuantos más home stakers seamos, bueno, yo aún no lo soy, pero en camino a eso, mejor va a ser para la red y también para nosotros, porque si estamos acá, ¿no? Si se bancaron tipo todo un día de conferencia, no es porque porque abocan por una red que sea descentralizada como lo es Ethereum, sino, chicos, creo que hay un par de eventos de Solana por acá, pero no sé. Entonces, nada, creo que esto es porque realmente tiene que ser importante. Asimismo, para hacer un home staker, como también escucharon, necesitan 32 ETH. Y la verdad es que muy poca gente tiene 32 ETH, y más aún si estás en Latinoamérica, ¿no? O sea, hoy son aprox $100.000, que creo que serán como 100 millones de pesos o más. Y la verdad es que como que no creo que sea muy fácil de conseguir esa plata para poner un nodo, ¿no? Entonces, creo que hay una solución que es bastante nueva todavía, que se llama DBT, que puede traer como esta posibilidad para que podamos participar de la red sin la necesidad de poner tanta cantidad de plata. DBT significa Distributed Validator Technology, que es una tecnología que distribuye a los validadores separando las keys del validador. Entonces, a través de DKG, que es una ceremonia que se realiza, se va a poder dividir la key que se genera al generar un validador en distintas partes. Hoy en día creo que se puede a partir de 4, si no me equivoco, y pueden ser como de 4 a 13, pero bueno, se busca que aún se pueda dividir más para que todavía puedas stakear aún menos, ¿no? O sea, creo que se puede a partir de 4, stakeando 8 ETH, perdón, pero dependiendo qué protocolo utilices, puedes stakear aún menos. Y creo que si usas el CSM de Lido, se puede a partir de 2 ETH, y están buscando que se baje a 1.5. Entonces, bajar de 32 ETH a 2 ETH habilita que muchísima más gente pueda tener su propio nodo, pueda correr un validador y pueda participar de la red. Ahora, esto no me voy a centrar específicamente en cómo funciona, porque es una tecnología que nos va a llevar un poco más de tiempo del que tengo. Pero básicamente en la primera imagen es como ustedes verían un validador normal, o sea que tiene el cliente del validador, su cliente de consenso y cliente de ejecución. Y si utilizamos DBT, nos pasamos a la segunda imagen, que acá van a poder ver que tienen las 5 keys diferentes, que sería del cliente del validador, que luego tiene un solo cliente de consenso y un cliente de ejecución. Y para esto también utiliza lo que son las firmas BLS, que va a terminar unificando todas las firmas que validan los validadores para formar un clúster. ¿Sí? De acá en más van a escuchar siempre la palabra clúster dentro de lo que es DBT, porque el clúster es lo que, como si fuera una caja que junta todas estas keys y todos estos validadores, que termina fusionándolo y siendo un solo validador de 32 ETH. Ok, entonces ya sabemos por qué es importante, y después de todas las charlas es como que seguramente les quedó bastante grabado, y ya sabemos más o menos lo que es DBT, ¿no? O sea, créanme que hay bastante más que eso, pero los invito a investigar por su parte. Sé que hay mucha información dentro de Equipo Stakers, también está el club de nodos de SIDLATAM, y Stakers, si saben inglés, tiene muchísima información sobre esto, entonces van a poder entrar e investigar por su parte. ¿Cómo empiezo? ¿No? Yo puse el nodo que me gané porque le tengo un poco de amor, pero ese es un dApp node que salió nuevo junto con Lido, que si lo escucharon a Nacho anteriormente de Sensei, explicó que eso básicamente vos lo conectás y ya fácilmente después de un par de pasos podés correr tu propio nodo, ¿no? O sea, obviamente, como él explicó, hay bastantes pasos más, pero con eso es como lo más simple que se puede realizar tener un nodo. Y si no, puedes tener tu propio hardware, que ya es comprando las cosas aparte. Una vez que ya tenés tu equipo, vas a crear tu validador, ¿no? Vas a generar esta key de la que hablé antes. Y después tenés dos posibilidades para dividirla. Podés hacerlo de la ceremonia DKG que dije, que va a dividir la key, o podés hacer un research de SSV o OVOL, que son dos protocolos que proveen DBT, o sea, proveen esta tecnología, y que también proveen el hecho de que vos puedas separar la key del validador. Entonces, puedes hacer una u otra. Ahora lo vamos a ver un poquito más detallado aparte. Y después, una vez que ya tenés esto, vas a ir al programa de SSV u OVOL, el que elijas, y vas a elegir el clúster del cual querés ser parte. Es más, podés entrar a Equipo Stakers y seguramente preguntás, che, quiero ser parte de un clúster, ¿quién está corriendo un nodo? Y ser parte. O sea, eso está bueno porque, no sé, por mi parte es como que yo quiero ser parte de un clúster, no solo porque no llego a los 32 ETH, sino porque también es la primera vez que voy a estar haciendo esto, y si bien sé la teoría y sé cómo se tiene que hacer, probablemente tenga alguna que otra traba, y si tengo gente que está en la misma que yo, voy a poder preguntar y vamos a poder hacerlo en conjunto, y no me voy a sentir tan sola en el proceso, porque yo hago marketing, hago bizdev, no soy desarrolladora, entonces esto es simple enough como para que yo lo pueda hacer, pero a su vez está bueno como tener a alguien a tu lado que te pueda ayudar en esto, ¿no? Y una vez que haces esto, vas a colectar la información de tu clúster, o sea, la última información, y vas a registrar tu validador en la network. ¿Cuál network? En la que vos elijas, porque va a ser la de SSV o la de OVOL. Y acá es como más o menos se muestra el proceso. No se ve muy bien la imagen, pero bueno, básicamente acá estaríamos nosotros, que es el staker. Vas a seleccionar los operadores, o sea, vas a seleccionar el clúster con quién y a los operadores con quién vos vas a compartir. Y si ya dividiste las keys con DKG, vas a pasar directamente al paso 3, si no, vas a ir al paso 2 para dividirlo dentro de SSV. Una vez que ya pasó eso, vas a registrar tu validador, va a aparecer dentro de la network de SSV y vas a terminar siendo un operador válido dentro de la network de operadores de SSV. Vas a tener tu DBT corriendo, vas a ser parte de la red y realmente vas a estar como aportando directamente Ethereum sin la necesidad de poner $100.000 al día de hoy, ¿no? Así que solo queda una cosa más por decir, que es se suban al mundo de DBT y staking.